You're listening to The Practical Wealth Show with Curtis May.
All right, hey guys. So welcome to another exciting episode of The Practical Wealth Show. So I have a special guest I'm really excited to talk to today is Mr. Tim Bratz, right? Tim is the CEO and founder of CLE Turnkey Real Estate. Really, we've just talked about is Legacy Wealth. Right?
Yep, Legacy Wealth Holdings.
Legacy Wealth Holdings. And it's a real estate investment company that acquires and transforms distressed commercial apartment buildings into high-performance assets for their own portfolio. Working in real estate, Tim has learned how to build passive business and create a residual income that allows him to live the lifestyle of his choice. Isn't that what we want, right? And he's here to educate and empower others to become financially free through commercial real estate. Okay. And so one of the things you're going to learn today, how he got started, which is buying his first house on a credit card at age 23. All right. But you know what I want to take a little bit of different tack. So I want to begin with the end in mind. Okay. So one of the things that you talk about is building a business around your lifestyle. So let's talk about what that means, and then let's work backwards and then go into some of your strategy and what you like to teach. What is it? Because people want to know what the end of the movie looks like. This is where you're doing all that stuff for.
That's a phenomenal question. I think a lot of people, they like entrepreneurship and the idea of owning your own business, and then they don't realize that a lot of times the business ends up owning them, right? Mm-hmm. I think there's different levels, different stages in business. And as weird as it is, it's actually easier to build a bigger business than a smaller business. Because now, revenue solves all problems. So if you have more revenue coming in, you can hire somebody to do the how. For me, I took a look at, and this actually goes back where, I was a workaholic like everybody else was. And I'd be burning the candle at both ends and trying to make, just moving things forward and would build my business and get it bigger by just working harder and working more. And that's not it's a hardworking way to do it, but not a smart way to do it. Right. And so about 2 years ago, man, I have a 4-year-old daughter now, and she was about 2 at the time. And she came up to me. I was in my home office, and she's tugging on my shoulder and says, Daddy, come and play with me in the playroom, And so I'm like, all right, hang on one second, baby. I was sending a text message. Right. This is after dinner, 6:30, 7 o'clock. And right before she goes to bed. And she's like, Daddy, tugging on my shirt, and ends up, and I said, hang on one second, baby. Hang on one second. She ends up going and playing by herself over in the playroom. And I finish up the text message, and I look down at it, and I look at my daughter playing by herself in the playroom. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I look at the text message, and it wasn't anything important.
Right.
It wasn't even anything urgent. If I didn't even respond to it, it probably would have solved itself. Right. And I just put my daughter off, my 2-year-old impressionable daughter. And I'm conveying a message that subliminally is saying a telephone is more important than playing with you. Right. And you convey that message when your child comes to you, and they're coming to you for affection. They're coming to you for love, for support, for comfortability and safety and security. And if every single time they come to you and you're pushing them away, and they start then associating you with not with love and support, but with, I'm sad, or I'm put off, or I have to go and find satisfaction and love and support in other ways. Could that turn into drugs and sex and all that bad stuff that we don't want our kids doing when they turn into teenagers? And so, you lay that foundation long enough and it trains them. And I was like, holy cow. And that was like an epiphany for me. And I hate that I go back to that feeling that I had when I'm looking at my daughter and I'm like, what kind of dad am I, But I'm thankful that it happened when it did happen, because I've been able to then create my business around my lifestyle. So for me personally, I see a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people like me and you, Curtis, right now, we're time blocking this 30 minutes to talk right now, right?
Right.
So we're not going to take another phone call. We're not going to schedule another meeting. We're going to be respectful of each other's time. And we do that for business meetings, but why don't we do that for family time?
Right.
And so for me, I started saying, hey, I'm going to start time blocking from 4:30 until 9 o'clock when the kids go to bed, and essentially through the end of the night, so I can hang out with my wife afterwards. I'm going to time block. I'm not going to schedule any meetings or any phone calls during that time frame. The other thing I do is I time block on Fridays. I don't work on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Now, do I answer some text messages if the kids are, at their cousin's house playing and I'm just hanging out? And do I knock out a little bit of work? Absolutely. But if the kids are home and we got family time, then I'm time blocking. My phone is away. Fridays, we do Friday Family Fun Day. So as goofy as it is, and it's got a little bit of alliteration to it, and the kids like saying it, and we'll go to the zoo or go to the museum, or we'll just go to a park. We'll just go to Chipotle and have lunch. We'll go and visit grandma and grandpa. We'll just do stuff like that. That creates, one of those kind of like a tradition, right? A tradition with your family. And so I've generated my business in a way where I work from Monday through Thursday, essentially 6 to 7 hours a day. So I've taken my work week that was 60 to 80 hours a week, and I've turned it into around 30 hours a week, 25 to 30 hours a week. And somebody's like, well, I'm not in a position where I can go and do that yet. And here's what's amazing that happened is you become more efficient in the hours that you're actually at work. So you're not tooling around on Facebook or social media. You're not finding ways to just fill the time. You're super efficient. You figure out ways to not go and meet somebody for a cup of coffee for an hour and a half plus driving time. And it wastes all your time. You actually hop on a phone call for 20 minutes and you're 3 or 4 times more efficient that way. So I don't do in-person meetings anymore. I don't go to like real estate investors associations, networking events anymore. I find other ways to communicate and to network with people. I don't consume social media. I only put social media out, right? So there's things that you can do in that regard where you're super, super efficient. And now my business is run more efficiently. And I've had people who actually say, hey, Tim, I respect what you do with your family so much that I want to do more business with you. Because I know that where your priorities are. I know you're not going to just screw me to make a couple bucks. I know you're in this for the long haul and for relationships. And I know what your values are. And I align with those really, really well. I know you're going to respect me and my family time in the evenings and on the weekends. And that way.
That is so powerful because I started doing that. I don't work, I work till about 6. I try to work Friday. I don't really work past like 3. I'm working on like you're doing, just taking completely Friday off. I don't work Saturday unless I got somebody that really needs to see me, but it's blocked out. I play basketball Saturday morning and maybe I'll do 1 or 2, after that. And I don't work Sunday. And I just decide I don't go out and see people anymore. So I've just decided, listen, I need to have a life. I remember I was coaching soccer. I said, I don't have time to do that. But I ended up, doing travel soccer. So I had 2 practices a week, games on the weekend and tournaments. And I made more money that year because I was more focused, but I enjoyed it. And I said, you know what, you have to build, because, the business will take up all the time and money you give it. So you have to begin with an end in mind. I am working. I was telling somebody yesterday, my driving force is freedom, and it's 2 types of freedom from and freedom to.
I like that.
You know what I mean? And so you've been freed from working for somebody else, but now because of your efficiency in your business, you're free to do whatever you want. And you're on what I call the other side of money. Right. And so that's what you're working for. People think it's about doing deals and just getting more money, but you're working. And what I hear is that with your family, you're very present. You're not with them, but thinking about this other deal over here, And so you've got to work to be present. So I think,
hey man, we're entrepreneurs, right? Like, are we when we love what we do, we love helping.
You think about it all the time. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So we're still thinking about it. We're still having conversations about it. It's just in a different capacity where now you have options. You don't have to, right? And so I'll give you an example. I just went to Spain. I was in Spain. My brother lives out there. Just got married. We were out there for 3 weeks, and I checked my email or my text messages for about no more than an hour a day. And there were several days where I just didn't go without. What I found is, we all put so much, I don't want to say this like in a bad way, but we think we're more valuable than we actually are, right? And we think we're more important than we actually are. And you know what happens when you don't respond to a text message or an email for 2 days? It usually ends up going away, taking care of itself, or that person was just coming to you because it's the path of least resistance to get an answer on that question. And they're just too friggin' lazy to go and do it themselves, So I found that by not responding to emails, I deleted probably 75% of the emails that came through and only had to actually respond to 25% of them. So now I batch my activities. So I batch my emails, and I batch a lot of my phone calls, and I do a lot of that stuff. So that way I'm only checking email maybe a couple times a day at most. And then what happens is people end up just solving the problems themselves. Mm-hmm. So that was a big piece of the pie too. So batching activities and time blocking has been hugely efficient. And then, I have a team that I've built up as well, and making sure you're managing your team properly. And the importance there is making sure you have metrics in place to measure your team, because if you cannot measure it, then you cannot manage it.
That's right.
Right. So you got to have KPIs, key performance indicators in place, and you have to be reviewing those on a regular basis. And if the numbers are where they need to be, then everything's great. And if you hop on a 5-minute phone call and you get everybody's KPIs every morning, and you realize one of them's in a downward trajectory, then you can hop on the phone and say, hey, what's going on? What can I help with? What can I support with? And then handle it that way.
Talk about a KPI. I want to go back to the beginning, but from if you can't measure it, you can't manage. Folks, he just gave y'all like 5 minutes of gold right there. So I hope you get this. But so business is business, but you're running a real estate business. Mm-hmm. So for those of you who are doing that, aspire that, what are the KPIs, key performance indicators? That means that you look at, like your dashboard of what you look at to make sure the car is, or the plane is flying right. So I mean, obviously, like the biggest KPI is usually EBITDA. Like what's your net income before any of your debt service and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. The issue with that, though, is it's a trailing indicator, right? It's not the activity that creates that. So you want to backtrack and figure out what is the activity that generates a higher net income. Right. And for my acquisitions guy, that's sending out letters of intent. How many LOIs did you put out on properties every single day? That's the number one KPI for my acquisitions guy. Which is marketing.
Yeah, essentially it's marketing and making offers. Yes. So it's not only getting the phone incoming, but it's actually putting offers out. So I can't control how many people are going to call. I can't control how many deals are going to come across his desk. Limitedly, you could, if you put out a certain amount of marketing, and you can create a ratio eventually of how many deals he's looking at. But the key number is how many offers are you making? And out of those offers, how many do we actually end up closing on? And so, but I can't control closings. I can control offers. I cannot control closings. So LOIs and making offers on properties is his number one KPI. My project manager, who's overseeing contractors and renovations, the most important thing for him is staying on time and staying on budget. So for him, it's a function of how much money has gone out on the property versus how much, like what percentage of money has gone out versus what percentage of work has been completed. Mm-hmm. And looking at that function of making sure that the contractor doesn't get ahead of the money, because as soon as the contractor gets ahead of the money, guess what? Things get delayed because they've already gotten all the money and they owe us work. We always want the contractor ahead and doing more work, and we owe them money because now they're motivated to keep the wheel going. So that's a piece of the pie. And then that's one of his KPIs. And then the other KPI is based on the projections of the timeline and of the budget. Are we on time and on budget for that? Okay. We originally set out. So that's him. And then my asset manager, who's really overseeing property management, their number one KPI is collections. It's not occupancy. A lot of people with rental properties think occupancy is their number one metric or what they need to pay attention to. It doesn't matter. Like if you have 100% occupancy, but only 50% of the people are paying, that is the metric that matters. Exactly. So it's actual collections, or you can talk about delinquency. I think collections is more positive than delinquency, but technically it's pretty much the same number. Mm-hmm. So those are the primary KPIs for the people on my team. My marketing person has a couple different KPIs on growing our database and our that kind of stuff. But for the operational standpoint, those are the most important KPIs in our business. That's awesome. So now, I want to put this in perspective. So you started buying a house on a credit card, and then you have, how many units do you say you have now that you're currently have about 2,500, and by the end of the year you'll have, we'll be somewhere between 3,500 and 4,000. And these are
apartments and commercial properties?
Yeah, I'd say over 90% is apartments. And then we have some vacation rentals and we have a few office buildings too. But 90% of what we do is apartment buildings or like mixed use, which is primarily apartments with maybe some retail and office on the first floor.
Why do you like that area? Why do you, because you just start out in residential, didn't you?
Yeah. So I started out in single family, and the issue with single family is the financing's a pain and it's not scalable. So I'd rather go buy a 100-unit apartment building than 100 houses. Why? Because I negotiate with one seller versus 100 sellers. I look at one foundation versus 100 foundations. I get financing through one loan versus 100 loans. Like just the scalability. I go to one location versus 100 locations. So the scalability of it is easier. And then in commercial real estate, it's assumed that you're a more sophisticated investor. Mm-hmm. And so it's when you go get financing, it's 90% based on the property and 10% based on the borrower. Versus residential, there's people who are not sophisticated landowners who end up owning property. Somebody inherits a property, or their spouse passes away and they inherit it and they never paid any of the bills, or there's a grandchild that inherited a property that, from grandma and grandpa, and they don't know what the heck they're doing. So there need to be like this red tape and all these different regulations and stuff in residential real estate. And the lending is a big piece of that, where, it's 90% based on the borrower and 10% based on the property. So it's hard to go through that. Like you can only qualify for 10 residential mortgages.
Right.
And what do? Now you got to go and find some other stuff. Like I have, I don't know, probably $100 million of debt on my apartment buildings, and none of it shows up on my credit report.
So wait, I thought debt was bad.
Here's the thing: consumer debt is bad. If you're using liabilities, that's a problem. If you use debt to buy assets that you can rent out and cover all the expenses of the operating expenses for that asset, plus cover all your debt service and the mortgage payments on that asset, plus put cash in your pocket, can be a very, very good thing.
That's a beautiful thing. That's right.
Yeah. And as long as it's like a gun, right? Like it can be used for protection. It can be used for assault and for bad things. And so it's depending on how are you using it and who is using your training and your sophistication. So
that's powerful. So man, my head is spinning now. I'm trying to think about so I want to go into some details, but I want to kind of go through the story so people can kind of see from whence you came. And then we hit commercial, financing. There are some really good points there that I want to get into in the time that we have allotted. I appreciate your time.
Long story short, I grew up in a blue-collar town outside of Cleveland, Ohio, in the suburbs of Cleveland, and moved out to New York City after college. My brother was living out there, and I moved in with him and essentially got a job as a commercial real estate agent. And so I brokered leases for retail and office space. Mm-hmm. And there was one space in Manhattan that I brokered out. It was 400 square feet, and it was $10,000 a month that we signed a lease for. And this owner, and I did the math, this owner is going to make almost $2 million with escalations and over the course of the lease term for doing something at one point in time. And I realized that, and that was for one rental, and he had 7 or 8 other retail spaces plus like 15 stories of apartments.
Wow.
I realized very quickly I was on the wrong side of the coin. I need to be owning real estate instead of brokering it.
Right.
So I moved down to Charleston, South Carolina, just for better weather and some lifestyle, and ended up buying the cheapest house in all of Charleston. This is 2009 now. So my first investment property was in the worst real estate market ever. I didn't have any money, but I called up my credit card company, got them to jack up my limit, and then I went and used that, a balance transfer check, to essentially buy this house for $14,000. And then I did all the work, and then I knocked on some doors, sold it to one of the neighbors. The neighbor paid $33,000 for it. So I made, after expenses and what I put into it and everything, I probably walked away with $13,000 or $14,000. And it was my first deal ever in the worst market ever. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm still making money. So I got hooked. And so I did it again. And then, you get to a point where people who have money, but maybe don't have the time or the knowledge on how to deploy that money, and they want to put it into real estate. And so I ended up partnering up and working out kind of like an equity split with some different investors and started building up a little bit of a portfolio. I partnered up with two guys. That whole deal ended up going south. We bought about 150 units when I first started getting into some smaller multifamily and single family rentals and that kind of stuff. And we liquidated everything about probably 3-4 years ago now, and just been doing my own thing ever since. So built up the portfolio to 2,500 units. It was it's one of those things where you think it's all consuming. You have to liquidate your whole portfolio. I've worked years to do this. But once you have the knowledge and the mindset, you can go and deploy that and build it that much bigger in a fraction of the amount of time. So I had the skill set already developed, and some things that are setbacks, right, in the time that you're dealing with it is really a setup for something bigger and better in the future. Yeah. So that was one of those situations where getting rid of that partnership and liquidating everything seemed like a massive setback, but there was a door of opportunity that opened up for me to do my own thing and build up my own team that gave me some like a jetpack to build it bigger and better and more efficient and everything. So it was good. And it's been amazing ever since. And so, I just kind of transitioned into multifamily that way. I realized the scalability of it. I realized the efficiencies of it. I realized the easier financing. I realized the tax advantages of real estate. I understood all that stuff. It just made a lot more sense. It's easier to get a mortgage on a $3 million apartment building than it is to get a $300,000 mortgage on a house, as crazy as that seems. There's less competition.
That is very counterintuitive right there, because people are like, oh, I got to work on my credit. I got to do this and that. And what you said earlier was that it's really more so about the deal and not about you. And that's a difficult transition mentally for people.
And if you find a smoking deal, it doesn't matter what your credit looks like. It doesn't matter what your, resources and your cash and all that stuff is. You will find somebody to fund that deal. Now, when you get into bigger apartment building deals and you're putting stabilized loans on there and all that kind of stuff, they do look at your net worth. They do look at your liquidity. They do look at your experience. But like a credit score, you really only need, I think it's like a 650 or 680 credit score in order to qualify for a $10 million loan, and then like net worth needs to be equal to about the loan amount. Liquidity needs to be equal to 10% of the loan amount. So if you got a $10 million loan, or $10 million building, $8 million loan, your net worth needs to be about $8 million. You need to have about $800,000 liquid after the down payment. And you need experience managing that size property or owning that size property, or you need like a really, really awesome property management company. But here's the thing in commercial, the other thing I didn't realize, there's other people that will sponsor your loans. They're essentially co-signers that'll come in, they'll sign on a loan for a percentage of ownership in the property. And you don't even need your own credit. You don't need your own money. You don't need, you don't need any of that stuff. It's also in single family, they want you to contribute 100% of the down payment money. Right. It is assumed in commercial real estate that you will go and raise the down payment money from equity investors, from private lenders that'll put the money into your project. So you don't need your own money. You don't need your own credit. Like, you can build up a real estate portfolio without doing any of that stuff if you understand the inner workings and the operational side of things. We took a look at our business a couple of years ago, and I was flipping houses. We were wholesaling houses, doing some other, the retail stuff, doing some turnkey flips on rental properties and selling them to white collar professionals or entrepreneurs. And, I looked at my net worth, and 90% of my net worth was coming from my apartment buildings, and it was 10% of my time. And I said, what if we just kind of pivoted the business? Right. And instead of looking at a single family, we just only focused on apartment buildings. And we went from about 400 units to 2,500 units in 2 years. Wow. And they're smoking deals. We've refinanced several of them. My model is a little bit different than traditional syndicators. I buy something still under the same premise of residential investors. So a lot of residential investors will say, hey, I should be all into a house for 65% of the after repair value. I do the same thing, but instead of being, a $100,000 house, it's a $10 million building that I'm all into for $6.5 million. Okay. And then my model, a lot of syndicators or investors will turn around and then, sit on it they'll buy a $10 million building for $10 million, sit on it, hope it appreciates for 5 years, and then sell it and then make a few dollars. For me, that never made sense. So we buy wholesale priced properties. We force appreciation by doing the value add, by putting the sweat equity in. That's why we can be all in for $6.5 million on a building that's worth $10 million stabilized. And then instead of going out and selling it, and we're at this point in maybe like 12, 24 months, we can go out and refinance it. Okay. So I can go put a 75% loan to value loan on it. They'll give me $7.5 million. I pay off the $6.5 million of private money and my acquisition loan. And then all my investors are paid back, right? And now we have a cash flowing asset, which is house money in play, right? It's a Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, non-recourse loan in place on a cash flowing asset. And the tenants are paying for the operations, they're paying for the debt service and putting cash in our pocket. The investors made a great return. And then me as the operator, me and my team are making good money on the cash flow. And then there's those refi proceeds too. So pay off $6.5 million. There's $1 million of refi proceeds that we're able to carve up. That's non-taxable money.
Right. Non-tax free money. That's right.
So, and then we have a depreciation. So that offsets a lot of the cash flow. And then when we sell the property, maybe 10 years down the road, we've paid down enough principal. It's appreciated over time. And any gain that we have down the road is taxed at long-term capital gains, which is much less than anybody's, earned income tax bracket. So it's a beautiful thing.
That sounds like a beautiful thing. How would a person, and assuming your education, because I know you're an educator, I don't know if this is like advice for a brand new person, but let's say I have a lot of people that have between, let's say 3 and 15, 20, 30 properties, but mostly single families, maybe a few mixed use, and they're excited about what you just said. Right. What's the path? What should they learn to kind of transition up the ladder, so to speak, up the food chain?
Phenomenal question. So the number one thing that you need to realize is commercial real estate's a lot less complicated than you think. Everybody thinks it's like this complex, mystical thing, and it's not whatsoever. There's different verbiage, which probably throws a lot of people off. And for me, I was like, I don't know if I can get into apartments because I don't come from, my granddaddy didn't go out and buy apartment buildings and have a big portfolio. Or I don't have these CCIM initials from going to some classes. I didn't go to Wharton School of Business or anything like that. And so there's these self-limiting beliefs that are in our head that we can't get into commercial. The reality is it's the exact same thing, but you're adding a couple different zeros. And what's really interesting is you're talking to more, and I don't want to say sophisticated, but just more advanced type people, right? Like they're just a little bit further along in the game. So your mortgage broker is probably smarter, wiser, more in tune than your residential mortgage broker. No offense to residential mortgage brokers.
Right.
Your contractors, this is a good one. Your contractors, you're not dealing with Billy Bob, handyman fix-it with a truck that's falling apart coming to fix your single family houses. You're dealing with like people who have government contracts, who are doing roads and buildings and bridges and doing multi-million-dollar projects. They're very sophisticated, not only contractors, but business owners, and they know their stuff. And so you're working with people who are just, again, a little bit more advanced, and it actually makes your life easier because everybody's an A player, right?
Right.
Your attorneys, like there's just more money to go around. And so you can attract better talent in those bigger deals. And so the number one thing is realize it's not as complicated as you think. After repair value is stabilized value. A rehab or renovation project is a value add project. It's just it's different types of lingo, I guess.
Right. Terminology is different, but it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, just figuring that stuff out. So, and here's the other thing, like you find deals the exact same way that you find deals in the single family realm. Instead of like we call it driving for dollars. You drive for dollars and look for a house with boarded up windows and tall grass. Guess what? There's apartment buildings with boarded up windows and tall grass. You reverse engineer, you can do a skip trace and find out who the owner is, send them a letter, give them a phone call, contact property management companies. You reach out to people the exact same way that you would reach out to people on the single family side. And the difference is you're just dealing with bigger deals. Project management, instead of renovating a whole bunch of different houses, you're renovating one unit and doing the same unit over and over and over and over again. So it's actually easier because your contractors and your subs are more familiar with how that fixture goes in, how that flooring goes in, how that appliance goes in, and they become super efficient by the time they do the 100th unit versus the first unit, so it goes very, very fast. The other thing is it doesn't have to be custom. Like a lot of these retail flips and stuff that you see on HGTV, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to customize those houses. Hey, if I took you to my apartment buildings in Ohio, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Texas, or Oklahoma, and I took you in the living room and spun you around, Curtis, you wouldn't know where you were because they all look exactly the same.
That's awesome. That's right.
Because they can, and you have efficiencies in that. So, like as entrepreneurs, we get this decision fatigue of having to make all these decisions every single day, day in and day out, little decisions, big decisions, and all that stuff. It eliminates a lot of that stuff, and it standardizes your process to then make more money, right? So it's not as complicated as you might think, and there's a lot of people who educate on this stuff. You can find a ton of information. I mean, I put out a ton of free content on my social media page. So if anybody wants to connect with me on Facebook, I'm active there. LegacyWealthHoldings.com. Go to like the podcast page. I have my own podcast. It's called Legacy Wealth Show that you can learn a little bit more about commercial real estate. And then I do a little bit of coaching too, through Commercial Empire is my platform. So, there's a lot of people who come in, they say, hey, listen, I'm an awesome operator. There's just a couple of gaps over here that I need to fill. Like I can't qualify for the loan. I can't raise the money or some things like that. Like, so we partner up with a lot of our students and we're able to fill those gaps. There's other people who are like, dude, way too much work. I don't want to do any of the operational side of things, but I have money and I'd love to invest it with you guys. Can you put it in play? Yeah, we can help them out too. And so it's a way that the cool thing about commercial real estate is, in residential, if you're flipping a house and you're going to make $20 or $30 or $40,000 on the flip, hard to carve that up amongst 3 or 4 or 5 different people, right? I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. In commercial real estate, you're talking about, an apartment building that has millions of dollars of equity built into it. If you carve that up, everybody's still getting paid really, really well. So to me, I'd rather have 25% of a watermelon that's this big than 100% of a grape that's this big. There's a lot more juice in 25% of a watermelon than in 100% of a grape. So I don't need to own the whole deal. I'd rather be able to focus on what my unique ability is, which is raising money, and then like the operations side of things, like the administrative side. My team's really, really good at doing that stuff. So we're always looking for like boots on the ground partners. We're always looking for equity investors in our projects and partner up with people that way. So it creates opportunities for other people to get involved in commercial real estate that they wouldn't normally be able to do. And knowing that, there's still a safety net there with an operator like me who's involved in the project that's able to just make sure that they're not going to get.
It's so funny you said unique ability.
Over their eyes.
Yes, it's and due diligence is major. It was funny you said unique ability because that's what I realized. Like, I'm not in love with real estate. I'm in love with the returns. Like I'm in love with everything you just said.
Yeah.
But my unique ability is in financial education and, doing what we do for our clients and building my firm, Practical Wealth Advisors. So I can make more money. That's my fastest path to cash, and that's my unique ability. But when I find good operators, I'd rather take my profits and give it to somebody whose unique ability is what you just described.
Well, I love what you're doing because you go to any major city in the country. What are all the tallest buildings? They're all banks and insurance companies, right? Which are essentially banks. Right. So with doing what you do with infinite banking, people can become their own bank, and finance is the industry that commands all other industries. Right. So if you can bring that cash and go invest it in different projects and get paid the same way a bank does by arbitraging, the difference. Like I know on high level, I'm familiar with infinite banking, but if you're able to borrow your own money at 2%, 3%, 4%, and then invest it with an operator who's paying you 10%, and you can make a 6% spread on that.
Right.
Like, pretty sexy, right? Yeah, not to mention the tax benefits and everything that come with it. So there's some major values, and it's actually another tool for you in your tool belt of being able to educate your clients on, hey, if you create this policy, then you can take these funds and roll it into another tax advantaged asset. Right. And that's how legacy wealth is built. That's how true wealth, generational wealth is created, is by understanding not only making money, but keeping the money too, right?
You got to make it. You got to keep
your money working for you when you're not working.
That's right. That's the thing. And so that is what allows you to have that lifestyle And so, folks, I told people, look, I want you to get organized with your money so you can save. You're going to create pools of capital. And I'm going to say, here, meet Tim. Okay, here's a place where you can deploy your capital outside of Wall Street. Remember, we want to help you create wealth. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat outside of the equity markets that you have more control, that are arguably safer. I mean, because what happens is safety is a question of your knowledge. Robert Kiyosaki always says it's not really bad investments. There's bad investors, right? And because if you're a good investor, you won't buy bad investments. You'll have weeded those out because you're financially literate and you can read numbers. So Tim, as I can talk to you all day, but I'm going to. I know
we got to come back on, brother.
Right,
you
got to come back on,
man.
Listen, because you hit like a couple points, my head is exploding. I'm like, wait. All right, but what do you want to leave them with, Tim? What is it that you want them to know? Maybe top tips, and what were you like maybe reading that got you on this? You really were doing. So I tell people activity produces knowledge. Yeah.
I never read a book on this stuff.
That's awesome.
I've been buying property for 10, 11 years now. I was pretty bad for the first 7 or 8 and got pretty good about 3 years ago, Okay. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden I look like an overnight success, but I paid my dues. I've gotten kicked in the crotch many, many times in every different capacity in this business. And now we have it so dialed in. It's very, very difficult to, like you said, there's only bad investors, not bad investments. So we have it so dialed in. It's very predictable of what our returns, what the property value is going to be, and all that kind of stuff. So I guess one of the things that I didn't realize early on is that there were people like me willing to bring money, willing to sponsor loans in order to get involved in some of these other projects and mentor and coach and all that kind of stuff. So I would definitely find a mentor. I'd definitely find a coach or join a mastermind group. There's a lot of real estate groups out there. And I'm not talking like a real estate investors association. I'm talking like an actual mastermind of some of the best operators in the country. And there's several that are out there. You can ask around and get into one of those of people who are actually out there doing it, not just talking about it. That's the number one thing that I would do if you wanted to get into investing. Go get educated and start surrounding yourselves with people who are actually doing it, not just talking about doing it. And then the number 2 thing, or 2 and 3 are 2 skill sets that the most important things you can get good at if you want to become a real estate investor is finding deals and raising money. If you can do those 2 things, you will be successful regardless of what's going on with the market. Today, it's very hard to find deals, very easy to find money. 5 years ago, easy to find deals, very hard to find money, right? Because people are saying run from real estate and all this other stuff. And everything was listed on the MLS. You could buy apartment buildings for pennies on the dollar. So join a mastermind, get good at finding deals, get good at raising money, or partner up with people who are good at doing those things and create joint ventures. Figure out a way where you can get everybody participating and everybody can bring their own unique skill set, unique ability to the table. Right. And I mean, in that scenario, 1 + 1 = 3. And you're able to do way more and create a bigger impact because everybody is an A player on your team and doing what they're really good at, what energizes them, what drives them. And the results are unbelievable, So those are the key things that I would do if you're looking to get into commercial real estate and, connect with me. I'm happy to chat with you. If you guys ever send me a message on social media, on Facebook or something, I'm the one who responds, not my assistant or anything like that. And happy to chat with anybody and kind of give you some pointers or at least point you in the right direction on where maybe the right resources would be for you, depending on whatever you're looking for. So, yeah, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what we're going to do is we're going to have all of Tim's contact information in the show notes. Okay. And so, reach out to him, get yourself involved. You have to take action. One of the things that, that I have been finding personally is that your number one asset is you. Right. And you've got to invest in your mindset, your skill set, and your network. And so he just emphasized that right there. And then, the other stuff, the cash flow will grow out of that. Okay. Yep. And it's not. And so now if you already have money, then he can help you deploy that money. But, it's just, it's what's the formula? I call it cash, asset, cash. You save, you get the cash, you buy the asset, it flows new cash. You take that cash, you buy new assets.
Give yourself a raise every time.
Every time. And everything, a year later, you guys, you hear what he said now. With this formula, he's going to, because his skill set's getting better, he's going to go from 2,700 to 4,000 commercial units by the end of the year. That's 6 months, folks. Okay. Mm-hmm. And now, he's took him 7 years to become this brilliant, right? Yeah. And but that's how it works. See, there's no get rich quick stuff. That's what I want you to come out of this. That you've got to put the work in. There's no what it says. Success only comes before work in the dictionary.
Yeah. That's great.
So Tim, I gotta have you back on. This was a lot of fun, and you really dropped like some serious knowledge bombs, and I appreciate you.
That. Curtis, I appreciate what you're doing, man. You're making a big impact financially on a lot of people, and creating leaders, and you're creating financial intelligence that's out there, and it's changing people's financial futures forever, and helping them create that legacy and that generational wealth. So, dude, you're doing amazing things. Appreciate you and all the value that you bring too.
My pleasure. Listen, we will, my new best friend, we're going to stay in touch. So
sounds good, buddy. I appreciate you having me here, man. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. And we will have you back. We talk to you soon, folks. Take action, implement, and have a prosperous day. And if you like this, so there's my forward this, share this, and leave us a comment on this if you like this kind of stuff. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Practical Wealth. To access the show notes and resources, go to practicalwealthshow.com. To get your questions on the show, go to practicalwealthshow.com. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any investment decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Practical Wealth. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.